saying he was gonna get a shotgun and shoot me in my face.
And that was after you told him to shut the fuck up?
No.
Whoa.
He came over here cussing us out. He was cussing him out first.
Cussing how so?
Saying fuck, shut the fuck up. You need to watch your child. If you're gonna come over here and confront a child.
I'm sorry, where are your parents?
Honestly, I know my parents will. Don't worry. Don't worry about my parents.
And that is fine?
Don't worry about me. Your child came over here cussing other children out. How about you watch your child and watch your child's language? I don't care. I'm gonna be straightforward because you shouldn't be coming over here saying, so you're gonna be talking to my child any kind of way. Your child?
I'm sorry. I need to know your parents and I need to know the phone number so we can have a conversation because clearly you don't understand how. I'm sorry, how old are you? How old are you?
Cussing at us. Okay, your child ready to get a shotgun and shoot me in my face.
Okay. You also know that my son is 8.
Okay. So you need to watch your child. Your child was in this park by himself. By himself. But still at the same time, he came over here messing with us. What point you do not understand that?
I'm sorry. How old are you again?
I'm 13, ma'am. Oh, yeah, 13. Is that sad for you? That I'm telling you what your child did and how he came over here cussing at us? Cussing at us?
He's in third grade. He is in third grade.
Y'all keep saying,
are you
age does not matter. Age does not matter.
No,
He knows how to say fuck. He knows how to say Jesus. He knows how to say he's gonna get a shotgun to shoot somebody in the face. He said literally that shit. You're the reason why double doors exist. Just because he's 8 and just because he's in third grade does not mean that he can go around talking to any other child any kind of way. What point you do not understand that? What in your head do you not understand that? So do not come and step into me. If you want my mother to come
I need you to shut your fucking mouth.
Who the fuck are you talking to, man?
Girlfriend, you back up.
Who the fuck are you talking to?
You want to bring it?
Who the fuck
Some stories begin with a crisis. This one begins with children playing in a park. That's it. A sunny afternoon in Frisco, Texas. A park sitting just beside a school. Kids doing what kids do. Laughing, talking, existing in that uncomplicated way that only children can. Nobody was looking for trouble. Nobody came there for a confrontation. They came to a park because that's what you do on an ordinary afternoon when you're 13 years old and the world hasn't yet demanded anything complicated from you. Her name is not important right now, and we'll tell you why in a moment. What matters is who she was in this story. She was 13, she was with her friends, she was minding her business in a public park in Frisco, Texas, on what should have been a completely forgettable day. Then an 8-year-old boy walked over. Now, before we go further, let's be precise about something. 8 years old, 3rd grade, a child who still loses teeth, a child who still needs help tying shoelaces, a child who by every measure of developmental psychology has not yet formed an independent personality. At 8 years old, a child is not yet who they are who they've learned to be. Every word they speak, every attitude they carry, every threat they make, it comes from somewhere. It comes from someone. Remember that. It becomes the most important detail in this entire story. The boy approached the group and began threatening them. Not the kind of empty posturing you sometimes hear from kids trying to seem bigger than they are. He told the 13-year-old girl that he would shoot her in the face. A 3rd grader, threatening to shoot a teenage girl in a park in the middle of the afternoon. The girls did what any reasonable person would do. They told him to leave them alone. Firmly, clearly. They weren't aggressive. They weren't looking to escalate. They simply told an 8-year-old child who had just threatened their lives to walk away. He didn't. And that's when his mother appeared. She was 45 years old. She had seen enough of the situation to know her son was involved. She walked over, not to apologize, not to de-escalate, not to be the adult the moment was begging for. She walked over to win. And what happened next was caught on camera, watched by a crowd of teenagers, and eventually seen by the world. This is that story. There's a particular kind of courage that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a raised fist or a loud entrance. It shows up quietly, in the way someone holds their ground when every instinct is telling them to run. In the way someone chooses words over chaos when chaos is standing directly in front of them. That's exactly what this 13-year-old girl did. When the woman walked over, the girl didn't flinch. She didn't back down, but she also didn't reach for a fight. Instead, she did something remarkable for someone her age. She tried to have a conversation. She told the woman what her son had said, plainly, directly. "Your child came over here threatening to shoot me in the face." She wasn't screaming. She wasn't performing for the crowd gathering around them. She was doing what any reasonable person would do when a child threatens them. She went to the parent. Think about that for a moment. A 13-year-old girl, the one who had just been threatened, made the mature decision to bypass the 8-year-old entirely and speak directly to the adult. Because she was smart enough to know that an 8-year-old doesn't manufacture a threat like that on his own. She knew instinctively what child development experts will tell you plainly. That child learned those words somewhere. That child heard that language from someone. You don't talk to the mirror, you talk to the person standing behind it. So she talked to the mother. And the mother's response told you everything you needed to know about how this afternoon was going to end. "Honey, excuse me, he's in the 3rd grade." He's in the 3rd grade. As though being in the 3rd grade makes a death threat evaporate. As though the grade level of the child who just threatened to shoot someone in the face is the relevant detail in that moment. As though a younger child threatening violence is somehow less serious, less worthy of correction than an older one. The girl pushed back, calmly, logically. She pointed out that age doesn't erase accountability. That an 8-year-old saying he'll shoot someone is still an 8-year-old saying he'll shoot someone, and that's a problem regardless of what grade he's in. The woman wasn't interested in logic. A second adult female stepped into the frame, a friend apparently who had come with the mother. Her contribution to the situation was 4 words directed at the 13-year-old child. "Shut your mouth." Not to the 8-year-old who had made the threat, not to the situation spiraling in front of them, to the child who was trying to address it responsibly. Shut your mouth. And still, the girl held her composure. She asked for the woman's phone number. She said she wanted to contact her parents so the adults could have the conversation that was clearly needed. She offered a resolution. She offered a way out of the situation that required no physical contact, no escalation, no confrontation. She was 13 years old, and she was the only adult standing in that park. The woman didn't take the exit. Instead, she looked at this child, this composed, articulate, remarkably restrained teenage girl, and said, "Girlfriend, back up. You want to bring it?" To a 13-year-old, a 45-year-old woman, squaring up, challenging a child to a fight in a public park, in front of a crowd of teenagers, in front of at least one other adult who said nothing and did nothing. And then she stopped talking, and she put her hands on her. There are moments that don't need interpretation. Moments where the camera does all the work, where you don't need commentary or context or explanation, because what you're watching is so clear, so unambiguous, so impossible to misread that the only appropriate response is silence. This was one of those moments. The recording shows it all. The woman moving aggressively toward the girl, the pushing, the grabbing, the grappling. A 45-year-old woman, fully grown, old enough to have an 8-year-old child, old enough to know better in every conceivable way, physically engaging a 13-year-old in a public park while a crowd of teenagers watched in disbelief. And through all of it, through every shove, through every grab, through every moment of contact she never should have initiated, the girl kept saying the same thing. Get the F off me. Not attacking, not retaliating in kind, not matching the woman's energy with something darker, just get off me. Stop touching me.
You are a grown woman and you need to stop touching me right now." She was still, even in that moment, trying to end it without making it worse. The fight didn't last long, but the damage, the real damage, wasn't physical. It wasn't measured in bruises or scratches. It was measured in what came after, in what a 13-year-old girl had to do when it was over. She called her mother. "Hi, Mama, there is a woman over here who just put her hands on me." 7 words that should never exist. A phone call that should never have to be made. A child, shaken, surrounded by peers, standing in a park where she had done absolutely nothing wrong, reaching for the one voice that could make sense of what had just happened to her. That phone call is the emotional truth of this entire story. Not the confrontation, not the shouting, not even the assault itself. It's that phone call. Because in that moment, all of the composure and maturity and remarkable restraint the girl had shown throughout the entire ordeal collapsed into something raw and real and heartbreaking. She was 13, and a grown woman had just put her hands on her. Meanwhile, the woman told a different story. Perhaps not fully grasping that the cameras had been rolling the entire time, she immediately began denying everything, loudly, confidently, telling anyone within earshot that the girl had touched her first, that she was the victim, that every person present knew what really happened. "No, no, no. Every person knows you touched me first. No, sweetie." Sweetie. She called her sweetie. The same child she had just been grappling with in a public park. The same child who was now on the phone with her mother. The same child who had spent the entire confrontation trying to be the reasonable one. She was now sweetie. The audacity of that word in that moment is almost too much to sit with. But here's what made it worse. Here's what elevated this from a disturbing incident to something that demanded a wider conversation. When law enforcement arrived, when officers responded to an assault that had been recorded on camera, witnessed by multiple people, and committed by a 45-year-old woman against a 13-year-old child in a public park adjacent to a school, she was not arrested. She was given a summons, a ticket, a date to appear before a judge somewhere down the road. Crystal Randolph, the girl's mother, was clear in her statement. Her child had been assaulted by a 45-year-old woman. The assault was on camera. The victim was a minor. The location was a park next to a school. Factors that legally should have enhanced the severity of the charges. And the woman walked away. Not in handcuffs, not in the back of a patrol car. She walked away with a piece of paper and a court date, while a 13-year-old girl stood there with a phone call to her mother and a story the world was about to hear. This wasn't the first time a recorded assault committed by a white woman against a black individual in a public space ended without an arrest at the scene. It had happened before. It would likely happen again. And that pattern, quiet, consistent, documented, is its own kind of statement. The camera caught everything. The question was whether the system would. Let's slow down and look at what actually happened here. Not the shouting, not the shoving, not the chaos of a confrontation that should never have reached the temperature it did. Let's look underneath all of that, at the thing this story is really about. Because if you only take away the surface of this incident, you miss the most important part. In Frisco, Texas, on an ordinary afternoon in a public park, the most mature person present was 13 years old. Sit with that. Not the 45-year-old mother, not the adult women who stood nearby and watched, not the friend who stepped into frame and told a child to shut her mouth instead of pulling her companion away from a situation that was spiraling fast. The most composed, the most logical, the most solution-oriented person in that entire confrontation was a teenage girl who had just been threatened, dismissed, talked down to, and ultimately physically assaulted. And she still tried to find a way out that didn't involve anyone getting hurt. That's not luck. That's not instinct. That is character. Fully formed, remarkably displayed
character in a child who had every reason to respond differently and chose not to. Now let's talk about the 8-year-old, because he is not the villain of this story. He is the evidence. Child development is unambiguous on this point. At 8 years old, a child does not arrive at threatening language independently. They are not yet the authors of their own worldview. They are collectors, absorbing, reflecting, and repeating the emotional vocabulary of the adults closest to them. When an 8-year-old tells a teenage girl he will shoot her in the face, he is not being creative. He is being accurate. He is telling you, with the honesty that only children possess, exactly what he has heard, exactly what lives in the walls of the environment that shaped him. You want to understand the mother? Watch the son. You want to understand the son? Watch the mother. The moment she walked into that park and chose confrontation over correction, she didn't just reveal her parenting, she confirmed her son's vocabulary. She showed that 13-year-old girl and every teenager watching exactly where the threat came from, exactly who authored it, exactly who would have to own it. And then she made it worse. Because here's what a 45-year-old woman with an 8-year-old child should understand, perhaps more than anyone, about laying hands on a 13-year-old girl in a public park. You don't get to claim victimhood after initiating violence against a child. The cameras were rolling. The witnesses were present. The evidence was clear. And yet the first thing she did when it was over was point the finger at the girl she had just assaulted, called her sweetie, told the crowd that the child had started it. That instinct to rewrite the story the moment it ends is its own kind of tell. It tells you that accountability was never part of the plan, that the goal, from the moment she walked across that park, was never resolution. It was dominance. And when dominance didn't land the way she expected, when a 13-year-old girl stood her ground with more grace than the adult in front of her, the story had to be revised. But the camera doesn't revise. Crystal Randolph, the girl's mother, said it plainly and without hesitation. Very sad, very unfortunate, but also very telling. Very telling. 2 words that carry the weight of an entire pattern. Because this incident didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in a country where black children have historically been denied the protection that childhood is supposed to guarantee. Where a black girl standing her ground is read as aggression, while a white woman charging at her is read as defense. Where an assault captured on camera, committed against a minor in a public space adjacent to a school, still doesn't result in an arrest. The charges came, the court date was set. The officer noted that the location and the age of the victim could enhance the severity. But she walked away that afternoon, and a 13-year-old girl made a phone call to her mother. That imbalance is not incidental. It is not a coincidence of circumstance. It is a pattern, documented, repeated, and in this case, recorded in full. What this story demands from us is not just outrage. Outrage fades. It trends for a week, and then the next story arrives, and this one gets filed away under a category we've visited too many times before. What this story demands is clarity. Clarity about what we expect from adults in the presence of children. Clarity about what accountability looks like when the cameras are rolling and the evidence is undeniable. Clarity about the specific and persistent way black children, black girls in particular, are asked to be more measured, more restrained, more adult than the actual adults standing in front of them. She was 13. She asked for a phone number so the parents could talk. She tried to de-escalate a situation she didn't create. She absorbed a threat, a dismissal, a physical assault, and the indignity of being called sweetie by the woman who had just put her hands on her, and her first call was to her mother. Not to retaliate, not to escalate, to her mother. If that child can find that kind of grace under that kind of pressure, then the least the rest of us can do is make sure her story is heard.
Make sure it's documented. Make sure that the next time someone tries to revise what the camera already captured, there are enough people who saw it clearly to say, "No, we were there. We know what happened." We'll bring you updates as this case develops. And if this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something, think something, or say something out loud to the screen, then you already understand why this kind of storytelling matters. These are the stories that live in the margins, the ones that don't always make the evening news, the ones that happen in parks and parking lots and quiet streets on ordinary afternoons to ordinary people who deserved better than what they got. We find those stories. We tell them fully. We don't look away. If that's the kind of content you want to see more of, hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel. Every like tells the algorithm this story matters. Every subscriber means the next person who needs to hear this will find it. Don't just watch. Be part of making sure these stories reach the people who need them most. We'll see you on the next one.